I'm also happy to invite Gil Horsky, Global Director Innovation at Mondelēz International, and Dr. Neta Lavon, Vice President of Research. Yeah, you may. Vice President of Research and Development, that much, at Aleph Farms, to join me for the next discussion. Please come on stage. We will try to understand what our food will look like, what will we eat in the future, how will we consume food, and of course, we will talk about Israeli innovation in food. Okay, thank you all for joining us. The three of you play a major and exciting role in the area of food and food technology, but each one brings a different fact to the table. Howard, I want to start with you, if I may. You in fact deal with the future of food through agricultural research, as you've shown. The plants which make up our food, you actually made Mars chocolate, right? Healthier.
Well, I don't think chocolate can be healthier. It's a snack food. What we have determined is that there are compounds, polyphenolic compounds, flavonoids, flavin-threols, and flavans that are found in the seed itself that, if taken before processing, can produce extraordinary health benefits. We have about 161 scientific papers on it. I'm not sure we're good at taking that to the marketplace necessarily at this point, but we have determined that there are benefits to those flavonoids which are distinctly useful in health.
That sounds healthier to me, all in all.
We don't normally put them in the chocolate, but, because the processing changes the flavor dramatically.
Yeah. Okay. What in general do you think about the food that we consume today? How can we use innovation to make it healthier and more nutritious? I mean, the span of the food.
4 billion people suffer from malnutrition in the world. 4 billion people suffer malnutrition in the world. 4.5 billion people eat aflatoxin every day. Aflatoxin is a cumulative mycotoxin. It's a class 1 carcinogen. So in all the research that we do, the last 100 years, how come we haven't been able to beat aflatoxin? So there's a series of projects using CRISPR 3.0 with Jennifer Doudna at UC Berkeley lab to work on making plants resistant. But then once you harvest these plants, you have to store them. And as most people know, storage is a complicated, non-equal process around the world. So we're developing using synthetic biology on a science program called Fold It, which is a public science program which people play the game online, a way to detoxify aflatoxin in storage as well. And we've had last count, 1,600,000 puzzles solved, of which 100 look like they will actually work.
So, if I'm still curious about your general opinion of what we usually eat, the normal, the average person, what would it be?
Well, the average person doesn't look like us. The average person is probably somewhere between what we would refer to as third world and first or second industrial world. They eat a diet that's lacking on what I would call fundamental nutrition, not enough folates, not enough iron, not enough vitamins, not enough of any of those sorts of things that we all take for granted. So I would say the real food system is broken. We're very lucky to live with companies like Strauss and others that provide healthy, nutritious food, whereas most of the world actually doesn't have that.
And if we try to look a bit into the future, where are we going? And let's refer to the Western world.
If we refer to the Western world, with the modernization of what many of the people talked about, David and Hossam, in a panel earlier, we're going to go to personalized nutrition. It'll be 100%. You'll get your genome sequenced for 10 to 15 bucks. It'll tell you you need more folates, more of this, and you'll be able to dictate your diet. Most people will cook it themselves, but if we're a bit lazy, you could actually turn to a service and say, I need this, and they will supply it to you.
And if I take you back to Mars, what do you think the future of chocolate and sweets will be?
Well, we suffer dramatic diseases in many parts of the world. Swollen shoot virus disease and red vein virus disease, cocoa pod borer, Phytophthora, Manilioptera, I could go on and on. Not enough science has been done to that. We're at a crisis point. Can we solve the disease problems and save 65% of production in the world, which is West Africa? Only using modern technology like CRISPR, RNAi sprays, or Afana sprays will that happen. Then it gets down to socialization. Will the European or Israeli or American public accept a tree that is resistant to those sorts of things, but has been gene edited, not gene modified?
But Howard, I want to ask you, we are, the general public, we are the guys who open the wraps when nobody sees, try to do it quietly, and we think about how many bites to put into this little thing, okay, how to divide it, the fun. Let's talk about that, okay? Will it taste the same? Will I feel so good and so bad after eating it?
Well, it's hard for me to say whether you're going to feel good or bad after eating it. What I can tell you is that all the effort that we're putting in is to save the crop from an oblivion of diseases. I don't think anyone wants to eat chocolate made from sawdust and artificial flavor. So the toolbox we have to use is a modern toolbox supplemented by Mendelian genetics. So it's this combination of what we can do to save the crop, increase the yield so that the farmers actually have a robust income, and we can stop deforestation.
Okay. Dr. Neta Lavon, you also deal with the science of food, but from a completely different angle. Neta heads R&D at Aleph Farms, a company which produces real meat in the lab without killing animals. Neta, this is one of the most exciting and interesting fields today, not just in food innovation, but innovation in general. I should tell you that I truly, I'm so curious about that, also because I'm vegan and I haven't eaten meat for so many years, and I'm looking forward to bite your steak. When can I have a bite? Let's start with that.
So thank you for
A small
inviting
one,
me.
doesn't have to be like the whole steak, small bite.
So I invite you to our labs and try the meat. In Aleph Farm, we produce sustainable, healthier, and ethical meat. And this is actually a genuine animal meat that replicates the sensory and the nutritional values that we get from meat. And how do we do it? I assume that was the next question. Yeah. So
Completely right.
what we do is we take a small biopsy of cells, a small amount of cells from a cow, and we put it in a broth that have all kind of nutritional additives, which are the sugars, the amino acids, the vitamins, the mineral, everything that the cell needs in order to grow, proliferate, and multiply itself from 1 cell to 2 to 4 to 8 in an exponential manner. Once we have enough cells, we then give them the trigger to differentiate, to become into specialized cells, the cells that actually comprise the muscle tissue. We need the muscle fibers, we need the fat, we need the connective tissue, and the structure that is built from the endothelial cells of the blood vessels. We take all these cells and we put them together on a scaffold and seed them in order to grow a real tissue. And this is the tissue that we're eating as a steak. So a tissue that comes from real cow cells without growing any animals, any cows.
Apart from my appetite and curiosity, I guess that after years of genetically modified crops, I wonder, would that be considered a genetically modified what exactly?
So in our farm, we're aiming not to use genetic modification, nor editing, like the CRISPR, or nor genetic modifications. Once we don't do it, this is not a genetically modified
So
food.
is there a price or a pain that waiting to be found in this type of meat? You understand my question?
No.
After we do stuff, then a few years later you discover, oh, there's this thing that happens, we could not forecast it, because it's not, it's a different type of product.
It's
it is
different
produced,
type, like every novel product, there are the risks that are not foreseen. But the process itself is mimicking the natural process that happens within the cows. We use the same materials to grow the cells, but in a different manner. Instead of growing it inside the cow, which is very inefficient And this is, if we look at the cow as a machine, no one would invented it because this is very inefficient in terms of using energy. The cow needs 9 calories or 9 grams of proteins in order to produce 1 gram of protein within the meat. So this is a very inefficient, and we know, of course, all the environmental aspects of growing cows, the greenhouse gas emission, and the land use, the water use. We are avoiding all this by using the new...
And the pain.
And the pain.
And the suffering. Sorry for putting
we are avoiding all this by growing the cells in this new technique that is called cell-based production.
Mm-hmm. By the way, which is a better, more efficient claim to advance this technology? The economic efficiency or the suffering of the animals?
So...
Ending it, I mean.
Okay. So it depends what is your look. So you're looking from the ethical aspect. I'm looking
I disclosed
from
mine. Yes,
Aleph Farms and the Strauss Group that we're coming from, looking mainly on the aspect of sustainability, protecting the environment and bringing better food to have a better world.
Yes, environmental reasons are very, very strong here. Do you really believe that the world could get to the point where animal killing is ended?
So we believe in combining different methods in order to substitute the current livestock production. Mm-hmm. There are currently 2 big movements that are moving in parallel that aiming to replace the animal proteins coming from livestock. And one of them is the plant-based alternatives, and this movement is getting very stronger, and we know that we see many more products in the market. And in parallel, we are developing the animal-based cell meat to produce many different types. And I believe that both of them will exist in parallel, and we might see some categories that are more, for example, the animal cells will be more prominent in the meat cuts that we're aiming to produce, opposed to processed meat or processed poultry that are produced by plants.
What is the timetable for this to reach my table, right? Like roughly?
Yeah, roughly. So in the field,
years.
yeah. So the first products are aimed to be in the market within, let's say, 3 years. When we speak with other companies as well, this is the list that we'll see the first products coming to produce the real meat tissue, a steak that is actually based on tissue engineering. This is the focus of Aleph Farms, and this is our unique technology coming from the Technion Institute of Technology. This will take a bit longer.
Okay, when do price of this piece of steak would equal and go below regular steak?
With price.
Yes.
So
that's a real question, right? It should be just as tasty and a bit cheaper.
So first of all, it has to be tasty. And the second is the price. So currently the main challenge is producing this meat in a scalable manner, in a cost-efficient way. And we actually have to think very different from what is the dogma today. Because today the culture media that is used to grow cells are mainly used for the pharma, for producing cells for cell therapy, for example, or for doing cells that secrete all kinds of proteins that serve as medicines. And once we do it for food, we have to think completely different, in a different scale of cost. So I believe that Howard can help us because we need to look at things completely different. And that's why we have a team that is interdisciplinary, coming from different fields, looking on these questions from different angles. And that would be the solution to bring it in a reasonable cost. The fact that we're doing bovine and not poultry, for example, or pig, is for this reason that we can ask for a bit higher price compared to other different species.
Mm-hmm. And just in a word, because Gil is waiting, can you tell the difference? I mean, taste-wise.
So actually, I can't yet. But no, I'm saying I can't really taste too much yet, so I can tell the differences. I prefer to improve it and then give you the answer.
Okay. I'm really curious about how lunches look at your working place. But Gil, you're the Global Director of Innovation at food giant Mondelēz, right? Which sells some of the best loved brands we all eat, such as Milka and Oreo. Gil, what is innovation in a food conglomerate? Where do you see the world going?
I mean, I think that the food industry is going through systematic changes, and as part of those changes, also the innovation process of most of the big food companies are changing. Historically, the process till now was quite traditional. We all use pretty much. I used to work in a different company, the food industry, an international one, and one can argue the innovation process can be copy and paste from one company to the other. We all use the stage gate process to mitigate risk. You get every time more resources. We all believed in the notion that R&D had to be internal with white labs and, the myth of the Coke recipe sitting in a vault in Atlanta. I don't know if it's true or not, but everybody believed that everything has to be very in-house. That can't work anymore today. It can't work because consumer demands and needs are changing super fast, much faster than we can actually address them. Technologies are changing much faster, and the retail environment we all had 10 years ago is completely not the same, and we all heard Jack Ma this morning, and it's going to continue to change. So that led in the last few years to a few changes in the industry. I think one, a lot of the companies are moving now to almost having a second innovation process, a much faster one, skipping stages, not doing as much consumer research, launching much faster things to the market, test and learns, even if they're not perfect, putting them there, getting the learning, iterating. If it's ready to go, scaling it. I think that's one big shift, and we're going to continue to see this, and most of the big companies are moving to that model. The second one is the understanding that we can't work anymore in closed labs with white robes, that we need to work with the outside world. Most of the big food companies have created corporate venture arms in the last few years. Most of them are involved in working with startups on a regular basis. Most of them, even like us, we bring entrepreneurs to our R&D facilities, and they actually work with us, which is something we would have never done 2 years ago. And today we open our R&D labs to work with them. So I think these are some of the changes we're seeing, and they're going to continue to accelerate.
If you look at the global map, what is Israel unique at food tech?
So I think, first of all,
if at all.
No. So I would answer the first part in a pure 100% answer. I'm confident, and me and Howard were both last week in London in a big conference of the industry. Israel is leading in food tech. That's a fact. Nobody can debate it. Nobody that's serious in the industry can debate that question. There's full alignment in the industry about that. Israel is leading the pack. I think, a lot of the people that have led that are actually sitting here in the room, the Innovation Authority, Strauss Group, the Kitchen, which is the Israeli incubator for innovation, is one of the first ones in the world. And I think if you try to understand why Israel is the leader in food tech, I think there are a few reasons, and they came in different themes in the conversation today. I think one is, actually, Israel had 300 startups in food tech today, based on the latest data. 50% of these startups were formed in the last 5 years. Now, if you would go and start analyzing the best of the startups in these groups, you would see a few interesting things. Most of the founders have not come from the food industry. Vast majority of the technologies of these startups have not come from the food industry. They came from adjacent segments and disciplines that Israel is very strong in. Pharma, biotech, you have a lot of entrepreneurs that are frustrated not wanting to wait 10 years and $100 million to get a medicine. They prefer to go to food. We all complain as food guys that food is slow, but compared to pharma, we're quite a fast industry. So you see that. On top of it, you start seeing a lot of young entrepreneurs, folks that are coming from big data, AI, and saying, you know what? I don't want to do another app and another thing just for the sake of making money. I want to have an impact. Food is where you can have a big impact. And we're seeing more and more Israeli entrepreneurs and scientists moving into these fields. And I think in Israel today, there are probably 4 areas that Israel is, in my opinion at least, considered the global leader in food tech. One is around sugar reduction. There are some fantastic technologies coming out of Israel. Several companies. One of them is actually one of the 3 innovation award winners of the Prime Minister, Duma Talk. A second area is actually lab-grown meat. In my opinion, if I look at the data, I think there's probably 10 good international companies in this area. There's a lot of hype, but probably 10 serious. 4 out of the 10 are coming from Israel, like Neta's company. And a lot of the science is coming from universities, Hebrew University, Technion. And the third area is food safety. We see a lot of good knowledge and know-how coming from optics into that area. And the last one, which came in some of the earlier panels, is actually personalized nutrition, which Howard said before, and I completely agree, which plays 100% to the strength of Israel. Israel, big data, AI, gut microbiome. We have some very good science coming from Weizmann. So Israel is probably a leader in these 4 areas.
So the last question that I want to address, 3 of you, what is the next big thing that's going to hit our plates? As you see, I always ask in the same direction. What is the next thing that we all going to feel at home?
I'll go first. I mean, it's quite interesting. First of all, there's a lot of, I mean, I know Strauss talked about the Instagram and everybody's posting their pictures of everything they're eating. And, you know, we need to all define the difference between a trend and a fad. And there's a lot of fads in food. I was just a few weeks ago on a trend tour with our team in New York, and some trendologist was trying to persuade us that the next big trend is charcoal. So everything we're going to eat is black. Snacks are going to be black. Apparently, all the toothpaste in the US are becoming black. I think that's a fad. And we probably need to see the difference between the two. But from a trend perspective, I actually think that the direction of food as medicine, food as a healer, is a direction that we're going to see the industry going more and more. Food, if you think about it, is the cheapest form of healthcare. If we want to impact healthcare, if we want to impact people's health, food is probably the easiest, fastest way to do it. And I think food is going to play a bigger role in people's physical, mental, emotional state. And we're going to see more and more innovation coming in that space.
I should say this is music to my ears. You know who said that 800 years ago? The Rambam. In other words, but the same message. Neta.
Yeah, in line what Gil said, the cell-based meat offers a healthier food because we can really make something new. We're based on the original meat cuts, but we can tune that the fat composition would be different. And also the content of the fat would be lower, reduced as we want, the heme, the iron, the major components of the meat that are currently connected with some medical issues, we can tune them and reduce them. This is on one hand. On the other hand, when we do clean meat, we do it in bioreactors in closed systems, which are big tanks like the ones in breweries that we produce beer in. And in these tanks, we don't have to add the antibiotics, which actually reduces the problem of antigen-resistant pathogens. The overall process is very transparent and traceable, so the meat that we offer would bring the same experience as real meat, but with a whole battery of properties and advantages, and this is new.
I guess many people would actually looking forward to a meat that leaves my grill clean. Can you do that? Howard, the next big thing that will change our plates?
Well, whether it's cultured meat in a laboratory or plant-based protein, you're going to probably need both. The real thing that's going to change dramatically is reduction of waste. Last time I saw a statistic, it was 145 billion kilocalories are wasted every year. The food doesn't get to the distributor in time, it's ruined. It doesn't come out of the field in time because it gets rained on, all these sorts of things. That waste is about 24% of all the water used in the world is embedded in that waste. So somehow we have to become much smarter, whether it's Israeli technology on direct irrigation, or if it's using CRISPR to make the plants much more resistant to wilting or to going through a ruinous perspective in the handling of it so it can stay fresh longer. All these things are really going to be the big thing that changes it. It allows food to move more freely across greater regions. I know there's food miles involved, but we have to get food to the people who need it the most, not the people who just want it the most.
You can't imagine how Jews hate to throw food away. Howard, Neta, Gil, thank you all so much for this great talk. Thank you.